What is the peptide 5-amino 1-MQ and what can it do for you? Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Standing here with my good friend Bruce from Legendary Foods, and they have done it again. Mac and cheese, 47 grams of protein, only 7 net carbs. I can't tell the difference between this and regular. I highly recommend you try this. I love it. Check it out at legendaryfoods.com.
Energy pouches are the wave of the future, and Underrated Muscles Locked In is first to bring it to you. With between 50 and 100 milligrams of caffeine per pouch, you can dial in the quick, clean energy and focus you need on the go. Simple, easy to use. Pop one between your cheek and gum to get you through your day, to get you through your workout. Code RX20, underratedmuscle.com. Get locked in today.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding and non-bodybuilding, your questions on the table over the course of the next 30 minutes. We're going to go right into the questions. The first 2 questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. So this first question is kind of all over the place, but stay with us. So the first part is how this user has recently learned how to take HGH, recently have implemented glucosamine supplements into their diets as well. But then the crux of the question is, do you coach CrossFit athletes? And if so, how do your protocols for a CrossFit athlete differ from that of a bodybuilder?
CrossFit is it's more of an endurance, obviously, activity. So you definitely need more carbohydrates in the diet. So if I have coached a bunch of CrossFit fitters. A lot of times they drop out of CrossFitting and they switch over to physique competitions because they wind up getting injured. Their injury rate of CrossFit is very high because it's a very ballistic type movement, especially as you get older. It's pretty brutal on the joints and it's pretty brutal on the tendons. So a lot of people don't stick with it, but yeah, I mean, I have to incorporate more carbs. I'm not really doing keto diets, although I've worked with women that have done keto diets and they've been fine on CrossFit because the CrossFit workouts are not that long. So a lot of times they can get through them pretty well, and then they burn fat efficiently. So I kind of see what the person's metabolism is. If they have a very fast metabolism, obviously I'm going to incorporate more carbs. If they're not trying to lose weight per se, then it's a lot easier because then I can give them, I can use a typical bodybuilder diet, high protein, moderate fat, and moderate carbs. If they're trying to lose weight, obviously, then I have to make a decision. Do I want to go ketogenic diet with them and try that because they have a lot of weight to lose? Or, once again, do I have to give them some carbs? Usually it depends on what their goals are. A lot of people doing CrossFit just want to lose weight. And in those situations, I try to talk them out of CrossFit sometimes or tell them to limit the CrossFit maybe to twice a week and do more weight training, cardio type stuff. If it's because they're CrossFit competitive, different story. In those cases, I'll give them a much more geared performance diet. More than likely, they're not going to be trying to lose weight per se. They're going to be trying to just maintain or increase muscularity and strength. So, but the supplementation is the same. If they're using PEDs, some of these CrossFitters do, some don't. It's pretty much, you're not going to use as much probably with them because they're not looking to put on massive size, but they want recovery, and stuff like that. So they can, because those workouts are brutal. So it's not that different. You just have to, if you're a good coach, you can make accommodations for what people need to do. I have people that are in the Army or in the armed services, and they have to do, once a month, they got to go and they got to do run and stuff like that. And so we have to make accommodations in the diet for those days. I have other people who are training for like the police academy and they got to run every day, but yet they want to, they want to diet or they want to put muscle on at the same time, but we have to incorporate that. So we have to make accommodations for that. And that's, once again, what a good coach would do.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience App. Your thoughts on the peptide 5-amino 1-MQ for fat loss?
Yeah, it's an interesting peptide, and unfortunately, it promises too much. So I'm not like, this is the end all be all. I'm really all in on the BPC 157. I love that, and the TB 500. But in terms of 1-MQ, it's I think the best. They promise that it increases insulin sensitivity. I'm not so sure of that. Okay, they promise it burns fat. I haven't seen that much fat loss with it, but what I do notice, and when you do the research on it, it inhibits an enzyme system known as NNMT. And what that does is it raises NAD plus levels in the bloodstream pretty significantly. And we know NAD plus, I take NAD plus as a separate injectable from TitanMedicalCenter.com, because we know that if you elevate NAD plus, your energy metabolism is better, the mitochondria work better, your cognitive function is better, you have more energy, available. So this peptide kind of makes your natural endogenous NAD plus levels higher, which will give you better energy output, which will give you better strength and endurance, and it'll give you better mental focus. So I like that effect of it better than I like the, quote, fat burning effect that people claim it has. Like, people claim it's like incinerates fat. It doesn't really do that. Does it have a slight insulin sensitivity effect? Yes, it does theoretically on paper. Does it potentially mobilize fat? On paper, potentially does. I haven't seen that, directly, like cause and effect. I think it's indirectly from the NAD plus levels elevating, which kind of amps up the fat burning machinery in the body by increasing, the oxidation of fat. So once again, I think it's all geared towards what's happening by raising NAD plus levels, which, like I said, is a great effect in and of itself. So I give it a shot and see how you respond to it, but don't expect miracles. But I think if you're looking for NAD plus, elevations, I think the peptide has a lot of promise. By the way, these two questions were from the Dave Palumbo Experience App. Once again, if you're looking for a good stocking stuffer, this is it. Download the Dave Palumbo Experience App. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. All my videos, all my writings, all in one place, organized. My off-season pre-contest diets, ketogenic diets, cyclical ketogenic diets, my drug cycles, off-season, pre-contest, beginner, advanced, men, women, detoxification programs. I answer everyone's questions on the app, all the app members, in an open forum. So you see everyone's answers and everyone's questions. It's a great learning experience. Once again, I do a question and answer video every single week exclusively for the app members. So you get like an extra Ask Dave. It's a great learning experience. We put up workouts of the week. So if you're looking to constantly keep learning and have basically me as your coach in your back pocket, it's a great tool. Just download it at your Android or iTunes store. And I want to thank you guys for the support over the past several years.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, our friends at Titan Medical, Dave, one of the most trendy fat burners on the market, which really took off in popularity over the course of this past Olympia. Nick Walker, very notably using it. Retatrutide. Retatrutide right now at Titan Medical.
Yeah, they're offering $50 off on their level 1 treatment. If you mention Palumbo, that's the cheat code. You got to mention the cheat code Palumbo when you contact TitanMedicalCenter.com to buy your Retatrutide. Once again, that is a triple, fat burning stack. You get the GLP-1 agonist in there, you get the GIP agonist, and then you get the glucagon agonist in there. It's 3 separate drugs combined into one injection. And, the research has shown that is the most effective at mobilizing fat. Obviously, a lot of people are using it. They're getting great results with it. If you're a cheater on your diet, you definitely want to use this stuff. And a lot of people are now microdosing it. So usually the prescribed dosage is once a week, one shot of a certain dosage, whatever they prescribe for you. But a lot of people now are dividing that dose up into taking small little mini doses every day of it. Probably the reason the manufacturer never recommended that was because most people don't want to take a shot every day. But bodybuilders, us, we'll take it 3 times a day if we have to. So you might want to even try the microdosing protocol. Once again, contact TitanMedicalCenter.com, tell them Palumbo, and you get your $50 off that level 1 Retatrutide. I know a lot of people are having trouble getting it because it's out of stock in the pharmacies. It's very expensive in the pharmacies. And Titan Medical Center is offering a very high quality of it at a very reasonable price. And now with this $50 discount, you guys can get a little even better. Just make sure you mention the cheat code Palumbo.
So there you go. And as always, for any products or services from Titan Medical Center, mention Dave Palumbo or RX Muscle, and they will give you the royal hookup. As we now move on to the rest of our questions. Well, actually, a couple of people have been asking this, Dave. Macadamia nut oil, when is it going to be back in stock at speciesnutrition.com?
It's back. It's back and better than ever. You know what the problem is? We have this tariffs now. So the stuff takes longer to clear from customs and everything like that. So this stuff comes all the way from South Africa. South Africa has the best soil for, growing nuts and stuff like that. So the oil is super rich and tastes great. And we've been importing it from there for 12 years. I have a really good relationship with the manufacturer there. And we've been selling so much of this stuff so quickly, we've been running out of it, which has never happened in the past. So we are back in stock, though. I don't know if it's back on Amazon yet. It's definitely on speciesnutrition.com. It should be back on Amazon shortly as well. And I think it might be already. But you can pick it up once again at speciesnutrition.com. And, should we tease that? We're going to have an NPC national sale, right, coming up?
I was going to not say anything because I thought you wanted to keep that a little hush-hush for now. Right. But yes, coming up in a couple of days. What we do promise on this show is, again, users can ask you about bodybuilding related topics, non-bodybuilding, and stuff about you that may be non-bodybuilding related. So this one is about obviously your snake, I don't want to say hobby or career or whatever, passion, whatever you want to call it. Your favorite python species?
Well, I guess really the question is the favorite snake species, because I have more than pythons. So pythons are like from Asia. And pythons all lay eggs, and then boas are from South America, like the Amazon, and they all give birth to live young. So there's a little difference between this. So I have boas and pythons, and ball pythons used to be really kind of like the thing that really got me the most excited, because the colors and the pattern differences. And the reason I breed snakes is I'm into genetics. I like to manipulate genetics to try to create new colors and pattern variations that have never been done before. So that's kind of like my enticement into the breeding realm. However, boas are more difficult to breed and they're harder, and there's not as many different color and mutations, so it's more challenging. So I would have to say probably boa constrictors, because of the fact that it's harder and not everyone can do it. Whereas anyone can breed mice if you throw a male and female together. It's kind of, ball pythons have kind of become that snake breeding thing. So a lot of beginner snakes, people get into snakes for the first time are getting into ball pythons. And so boas are still very challenging. So I like the fact that there's a challenge there and that I can do that. So I would have to say boa constrictors are probably my favorite.
So the second part of his question was about a Tom Platz leg day. Now, he's asking if you did that. I guess for those who may be unaware of what a Tom Platz leg day would look like, if you want to enlighten us a little bit more. But have you tried a quote-unquote Tom Platz leg day, and what were the results?
Yeah. I don't do very high volume for any of my days because I just overtrain real quickly and I don't get good results. Tom is like one of these people that trains to failure every set, and he does a lot of sets. And so I never really got into that crazy, where he does those quarter reps and half reps and eighths of a rep and 16th of a rep where the whole machine is jumping off the ground. I appreciate what he's doing, but I don't go that far, because I think it doesn't really produce any productive results. What I think the reason why Tom's legs are so good is because I've never seen anyone have better form on the squat. The guy was the best squatter of all time, and I try to emulate that aspect of what he did. Full range of motion, legs wide apart, sink it below parallel, control the weight at all time, squeezing the way up. That mentality of putting that mind and muscle together is what builds great legs. And that's what I, emulated about him. I just didn't go crazy with I don't even think the other stuff he did after squats even mattered anymore, because the squat was so good and he was able to squat so heavy with really good controlled form. And that's what I tell everyone. I said, listen, you don't even need to do any. Jerry Scalisi, my good friend, told me a long time ago, he goes, if you just squat, you don't even need to do any other leg exercises. You'll have great legs. And he was right. He really was right. And unfortunately, a lot of guys don't want to squat. I ask these guys that are trying to build their legs, are you squatting? And they're like, well, I'm doing Smith machine or I'm doing the squat machine. And I'm like, you're not going to build legs if you're not free weight squatting. Now, some people do have obviously limitations because they have injuries or back surgeries, knee problems. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are healthy who don't squat because they're just lazy or because it's not fun. It's uncomfortable. First of all, you gotta put the weights on the bar. You got to set the bar up and it hurts. And so a lot of people don't want to do the work. Or if they squat, they're doing partial reps. And you got to do the full range of motion. It's not fun. And you're going to probably have to start a lot lighter than you think you have to start because you don't have the form down properly. Once you build proper form with maybe just body weight and the bar, then you can start increasing your weight. And that's another mistake people make. They feel like, they see these girls squatting, 225 and they feel embarrassed. So they throw that weight on there and they're doing horrendous form with it just because they want to say, I can squat as much as that girl. That girl might have been squatting for 10 years and built up to that. So don't worry about the weight. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Do the exercise the proper way. And I promise you will get big legs. It's impossible not to.
Question about, I guess, the science or the comparison in the science between building muscle and losing fat. Can you explain as far as scientifically why it's easier to gain fat rapidly than it is to build muscle?
Well, Dorian said it best. A bag of shit, if you add 20 pounds of it, it's just a bigger bag of shit, It's easy if you just gluttonously eat, sugar and junk food to store it as garbage. I mean, what is your body going to do with it? Your body can only burn so much of it, right? It's going to store the rest of it. However, your body, if you eat a ton of protein, it's not going to just build muscle for nothing, for no reason. There's got to be a stimulus there. So you have to actually go into the gym, damage the muscle in such a way that the muscle feels it has to build itself bigger, okay? And then you have to have the hormonal environment conducive to build that muscle, okay? Whether it's natural or artificially taken, that goes without saying. So there's a lot of conditions that are necessary to be met in order to build muscle versus fat. Any couch potato can sit on the couch and eat ice cream and Doritos and junk food and pizza and get fat. You don't have to do anything to do it. You just have to consume the food. With bodybuilding, there's a lot of conditions that need to be met before your body builds muscle. So it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. It's pretty self-explanatory.
How much, or rather, when doing prep, we talk about cardio, but then the trade-off if you overdo it on the cardio. When is it too much cardio on prep? Is it worth losing detail in legs to get that extra level of conditioning? And do you believe in that concept of the cardio eats away at your legs heading into a contest?
I think that cardio can absolutely eat into your legs, more so for men than women. Women don't seem to lose muscle as easily as men if you're doing the cardio wrong. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean by if you're on the Stairmaster or the stepper and you're slamming, and going super high intensity, you're absolutely going to lose muscle. Okay. Or the predisposition to lose muscle is going to be much higher. Some people don't, but most men will, and some women will. However, if you're doing steady state cardio, like I recommend, walking on a treadmill, pedaling a stationary bike, doing ellipticals, stuff that's non-high impact, that doesn't require a lot of like climbing and high tension on your legs, you're going to burn exclusively fat. You're just moving. That's why I explain to people, when you're doing cardio, it shouldn't be hard in the sense, and I'm not talking about, when I say hard, I mean, you shouldn't be feeling lactic acid burning in your legs. That means you're doing it at too high intensity a level that's too high intensity. And the reason is that when intensity gets too high, you stop burning fat and you start burning carbs exclusively for fuel. We don't want to do that. We want to burn stored body fat. Okay. It doesn't matter how many calories you burn. It's what the composition of the calories are, right? I mean, if you burn 1,000 calories doing high intensity cardio, but you're using 80% carbs as the fuel source, that's not as important as if you burned 100% fat burning half the amount of calories. At least you knew all the calories you were burning were going to be fat calories. So stop doing high intensity cardio. Stop doing these crazy Stairmaster stepper type cardios, especially if you have a predisposition to lose muscle real easy, and just do longer duration of the lower intensity, what we call steady state cardio. And it means you should still challenge yourself, but it shouldn't be where your legs are burning. Once your legs start burning, it means you're doing something that's too high intensity. It's not a leg workout you're doing. You can't spot reduce fat on your butt and legs. It will just be eaten up equivalently over the entire body as the fat burning process proceeds. So don't think by stepping on the stepper and kicking back every time you step up one step that you're going to, bring your glutes in more than if you just walk, on a treadmill. It's just not the case. And I think people have to separate that in their mind because they just don't get it. So you can do a lot of cardio. You can do 2 hours of cardio a day as long as you're doing the right kind of cardio. However, if you do 2 hours of high intensity cardio, you're going to lose muscle. And it's a very simple solution. It's a very simple answer to the problem. Just don't do high intensity cardio. Don't do things that require that your legs are working, like as if you're doing a leg workout. That's not the intention of cardio, not for physique development.
So actually, we had another question very similar to this, and it was about Jay Cutler talking about his preferred method of cardio, and that is the Stairmaster for fat burning, for etching and detail. Again, now to his point, he says, so many bodybuilders will hop on a treadmill and walk slowly. Can you, in your what you just explained, somebody who chooses to do the step mill, is that something that can be done over a long duration of time without eating your legs? Or do you feel like just inherently, the longer you do that, you're going to be eating away at your legs?
I love Jay Cutler. He's a good friend. I was on his podcast a couple of weeks ago, but I'll give you the same advice I've given over and over the years. Never ask a guy with big arms how he got big arms like Ronnie Coleman. Never ask a guy with huge genetic legs like Jay Cutler what he does for legs, or what he does to work when he works his legs, because it doesn't matter. Those guys can Ronnie can lift a Heineken up and he's going to build big biceps. Vince Taylor notoriously used to do 25, 30-pound dumbbell curls, and he had the most insane set of arms of all times. Okay, that's not the guy you want to find out how to get big arms from, because he doesn't even know. He just genetically has big arms. I think Jay could probably walk on a Stairmaster for 2 hours straight and probably wouldn't lose an ounce of muscle in his legs. He's a genetic freak. You don't listen to people like him. Plus, his legs are so good that it doesn't even matter if he loses a pound or two of muscle here or there. So he has it plenty to give up. And, once again, he's Mr. Olympia genetics. So that's the worst person to listen to. He's telling you what he did because he's being honest about what he did over his career. It doesn't mean you should follow it. It means you should run for the hills when you see. Same thing. Don't ask Flex Wheeler how his waist got so small, okay? Because he can tell you all the abdominal exercises in the world that he's done. You're still not going to have a waist like Flex Wheeler. It just is what it is. It's genetics. But ask a guy who has trouble getting in shape what he does. That's the guy that's more impressive. The guys that have to work their asses off to achieve a level of success in bodybuilding that's not just given to them because they have God-given genetics. That's what you want. That's why you want. That's why you need to know the science of what's going on. If you don't know the science of what's going on, you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Similar to Dexter Jackson in how bodybuilders will hold water after a long flight. He said he actually dried out flying a long flight. So go figure.
I did too. Yeah.
What labs do I need to get done, and what markers do I need to look out for when I'm on a diet to lose weight, fat? I'm on test, bold, T3, and Clen. Everything else, diet, supplements, everything is in check. But specifically, I'm on a cut, or I guess dieting for a contest. Labs, markers, should I look out for in this process?
I don't usually do labs while I'm getting ready for a show because, a lot of times when you're on a lot of drugs and you're dieting really hard, things just come back wacky and weird. And then the doctors scare you. And then, some guys will wind up stopping. But so I usually tell people to get labs after they're done with the show and they've been off for about 3 weeks. However, if something's not working, in other words, if you feel very watery or you're not losing weight, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do a basic metabolic panel to check, your kidney function, do a thyroid panel to check TSH, T3, T4, because maybe your free T3 is low, and that's why you're not losing weight. There could be like, a thyroid issue. Obviously, kidney function is always good to make sure because that could be, if your kidney function is high, it could be why you're holding fluid. Also check your estrogen levels, DHT, to see, if your estrogen is too high, sometimes that could be causing fluid retention, or if it's too low, sometimes that could lead to being too flat or losing your sex drive. So if something doesn't feel right during the prep and it's not working properly, then you can go and get the blood work done. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it, because invariably stuff comes back wacky. And once again, these doctors just don't understand bodybuilders. And then the problem is that they tell you better stop everything you're doing because you're going to die. And people get scared and then they stop. So do your blood work after the show's over. That's my suggestion.
Question about injecting intramuscularly. My whole life, I was taught to inject IM. However, recently, I saw a YouTube video of a TRT doctor saying it was perfectly fine to use a shorter needle and inject subcutaneously into fat. Is there any truth to that? I would assume it would welt up and not dissipate, or at a minimum, slow absorption rate. Would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, the reason I don't like sub-Q injections, of oil-based drugs. Water-based is fine because it doesn't really matter. Although I would never inject anything into my abs. I know guys like to do it. I don't know when they inject into the abs. I think it was the old, doctor's instructions to diabetics to inject your insulin into your stomach. But there's no real advantage to doing that. I can't imagine why you would want marks on your stomach. I mean, that's the most visible muscle, for a bodybuilder. So never inject your abs. You can inject into your legs, under the skin. Oil-based drugs injected subcutaneously, tend to welt up and leave marks and stuff like that. So I don't see an advantage to doing that. I mean, if you really want to do micro-dosing, small amounts of like oils and stuff like that, you can still do it in your shoulder with an insulin pen. There's no reason why you have to do it into the fat cells. Now, for the average person who's very fat, an insulin pen might not hit the muscle, in the shoulder. But for anyone who works out, who has any degree of deltoid development, you can absolutely, with an insulin pen, pin the muscle with microdosing, like any kind of oils you're doing. I would never put oils under the skin. I would always put them intramuscular. There's no reason to do it that way, and no advantage.
Sorry about that. A question from Matthew Alba. When a carb gets stored into a fat cell, what is the caloric density of the fat now? 1 gram of carb is 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. Is that 13 calories now stored?
No, you can't. There's no equation that you can do to take how many grams of carbs does it take to make 1 gram of fat. I have no idea. It's I don't know how many grams of carbs is it going to take to produce a certain production of fat. I don't think there's any mathematical formula in the world that can figure that out, because everyone's metabolism is different. So there's no way to figure that. Also, some guys can eat excess carbs and they just burn them up. Other people, they look at a carb and they store it. So there's no formula on the planet that could accurately predict that.
Question for post-gyno surgery. Do I have to take the same dosage of armidex on cycle, or can I reduce it?
Yeah, I mean, if you were taking a higher dose of arimidex to begin with because you were having, gynecomastia issues, breast tissue development, and now you don't have the glands there anymore, you don't have to worry about it anymore, you might want to just take enough arimidex to keep your estrogen in the normal range, which quite possibly could be considerably less than you were doing. I know some guys that have to take a whole milligram every single day because otherwise the gyno is terrible. And then, when the surgery's over, and they get removed, they can go down to a 0.5 milligram 3 times a week, and their estrogen levels is in the controllable range. So it's hard to tell because everyone aromatizes differently. You'd have to do some blood work and see what your estrogen levels are.
Question from a diabetic. When I use my tresiba and overrapid, I'm prone to putting on a lot of water weight on. How can I stop the water weight? Or am I eating too much protein? I'm low carb. I can't do high fat as my blood sugars rise too much.
Yeah. the problem with it's not the long-acting insulin. Long-acting insulins don't really cause fluid retention. I mean, you can tell I take a long-acting, I don't have any fluid retention. But the short-acting, the rapid-acting ones are what cause the fluid retention. And it's just unfortunately, it's a result of taking an exogenous fast-acting insulin. It just overstores things. It's not like a natural release that your body would have. So, as your carb intake goes down in your body, you're going to have less need to inject the fast-acting insulin, and you'll notice less fluid retention. So that's the best way to control it, would be to keep, carbs intake really low. But once you start eating carbs and you have to take that rapid-acting insulin, you're going to hold some water, and some people hold more than others. Now, I didn't really understand what he said about the fat. He can't eat fat or it converts to carbs. Is that what he said?
Yeah, he says he can't do high fat as blood sugars rise too much.
Well, fat shouldn't make blood sugars rise at all. So I don't know where he's coming with that. But usually diabetics do really. Ask Greg Valentino, in case you guys didn't know he's a diabetic. But he eats higher fat, moderate fat, higher protein, and very low carbs. And when he does that, he doesn't have to take a fast-acting insulin. He can just take the long-acting insulin, and he controls his blood sugars really well. So I don't know what this person's issue is, and I haven't really analyzed their diet, so it's hard for me to make comments on that. But yeah, I mean, fluid retention is usually related to how much fast-acting insulin you have to take.
We often talk about shakes and whole food, and I guess the variations, and as far as convenience of having shakes. I guess this user wants sort of a reiteration on, obviously, look, whole food is better, but there's a reason why we came up with protein shakes in the first place, and that is for the matter of convenience. Says he's having a hard time eating enough. So I guess really what he's looking for, and if you want to clarify a little bit more as far as the value of replacement for having a shake if you can't get your whole meals in.
Well, I like shakes for convenience, obviously, purposes. I mean, they're very convenient to have protein shakes. But I also liked it especially when I was growing, because remember, when a protein shake is taken in, you're absorbing, let's say you do 50 grams of protein in a shake, okay? You're absorbing all 50 grams almost simultaneously, all at one time, right? And so you're getting this big infusion of amino acids into the bloodstream, and it raises those levels very rapidly, okay? When you're eating a meal, you have to digest the meal and absorb it. And that could take, a couple hours before you absorb all those amino acids from the meal. So what I would like to do in off season when I would compete is I would do like meal, shake, or shake, meal, shake, meal, shake, meal. So every other meal, I was getting this huge infusion of protein into my bloodstream very rapidly. And then I had this consistent level of protein being constantly released from the food I was eating. So I purposely would alternate between shakes and meals. It also makes it a lot easier to eat the food, because then you're only eating food every other meal, and the shake is super easy to just pour a shake down your throat. And so for me, that worked really efficiently. Now when I was dieting for show, I still did some shakes, but I didn't do as many because I wanted to eat the food because I was so hungry all the time, So a different strategy, of course, but especially for people who can't eat, if you're doing 6 meals a day, do 3 shakes, 3 meals. If you're doing 8 meals a day, do 4 meals and 4 shakes, and alternate them every other. Don't do them back to back. And this way you're going to get this nice curve of amino acids in the bloodstream. You're going to have a nice steady curve, and then it's going to go up. And then you're going to have this. So you always have a steady infusion from the food you're eating of amino acids. But then every other meal, you're getting this spike of protein into the bloodstream, which is going to help spike protein synthesis.
Let's finish out with this one. This is something that you and I have had conversations about, and I know that you've toyed around with the idea, but it is one that I think a lot of people would be excited about should you choose to go down this road as far as your next venture. Given the extreme popularity, obviously, bodybuilding in the southern states, Florida, Texas, he mentioned specifically. Now, his question is, would you ever consider opening up a, quote, Species gym? There is already a Species gym, and yes, we do have an affiliation with them, and they do a great job. But would you open up your own gym in Florida? I can't say in commercial gyms, and I only train specifically, say, at powerlifting, bodybuilding gyms. Right. In his opinion, it would be another good boost to the Species brand, the product line, and so on and so forth. But again, your ideas how you see the gym experience or the way that it should be, how a hardcore bodybuilding gym should be. Is this something you would seriously consider over the next few years?
The situation would have to be right, and the right people would have to be in place, like to help run the gym. Because I'm too busy to run a gym and be there every single day. And if that's, if you're not at a gym, it's doomed to fail. So I'd have to have really good people around me. And I have people that have expressed interest in doing something like that with me. And I'm sure I have people that would be willing to put money into it and stuff like that. It would have to be the right time. I don't think it's the right time right now, but I'm not ruling it out. I've always said I'll never open a gym. I'm not ruling it out, but it would have to be like everything would have to coalesce from the universe in the right way for me to do it. But if I did do it, I would make it like more of an exclusive gym experience. It would be hardcore, but it would be clean. It would be air conditioned. It would offer a lot of amenities, and it would be very expensive to train there. I would let IFBB pro athletes train it for free because I think that's they've earned that. But I would make it exclusive. I don't want 6,000 people in the gym every day because that makes the gym, tears it down, and I don't need to brag about how many members I have. I'd rather have fewer members paying a higher amount of money for a high quality experience there, meaning that they have access to good quality supplements, food, because I would have a food bar for sure. And I would have the best equipment there that I felt was the best equipment, that could be put into a gym. So everything would be super high. And just like I do with the Species nutrition line of products, I would make a high-end gym like that was just all high-end stuff in there. And I think people would appreciate it, and they would pay the money for it because they'd say, you know what? I don't want to go anyplace else after I train at this gym. That's the experience you really want to have. I think a lot of bodybuilders like a hardcore atmosphere. And it's really, the atmosphere is just what you create. If you have great equipment, okay, and it's in an environment where everything you could possibly need is in one place, and you don't have a bunch of young idiots running around causing trouble. And that's not to say I don't want young people in there, but I want serious young people. I think that's an environment that would be conducive to people wanting to train and better themselves. And I think that people would help each other, and we'd have good trainers there. And I think that it would create something different than the commercial gym experience that's currently out there. Because let's face it, everything's commercial now, right? You have Crunch. I go to Crunch, Planet Fitness. You have all these Change 24-hour, that are out there doing this, for $10 a month. And so most people are going to go there, but a lot of people are sick of that type of a situation, and they want something more exclusive. That's why gyms like Derek's gym and Flex Lewis's gym and Steve Weinberg's gym are so coveted by the people who go there, because it is a special training environment. So I think we're lacking something like that down here in my area, which once again may or may not happen over the next couple of years, but I'm not right now. That's not where my thoughts are geared.
I think you have just laid out maybe the literal dream facility to train at. High end, nice places to eat, only the most high end equipment, high end supplements, no broccoli heads. I mean, literally, where do we sign up? So,
well, Sid, you remember that the gym you just went to in Saudi Arabia, the Oxygen gym there? Yeah. It's like the Oxygen gym experience in a smaller package, because that's just,
that's too big, right?
It's a monstrosity. It's a monstrosity. Yeah. It would cost
a gym of that size would not, I'm not saying it can't work, but you would need a lot of land and a lot more of an initial investment. We're talking about.
We need a desert. We need a desert to build it. We don't have a desert here in Florida, unfortunately.
But fear not, residents of Cape Coral, Fort Myers, we will stay on Dave for this idea. And if you're sick of your current gym going experience, fear not. Come 2027, Palumbos will be ready and available for you. And with that, that's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. We have all new episodes of yesterday's After Hours podcast, a truly hilarious episode. One of the remaining alive Barbarian brother. No, he was not on the show, but yes, he questioned Valentino's narrative or stories about certain stories that are taking place at Gold's Gym. So anyway, Valentino comes to his defense. Jimmy the Bull makes a cameo appearance towards the end. Totally hilarious episode. And then, of course, Monday's episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Chris Aceto, Derek Lunsford's coach, directly answers the, quote, accusations of Derek and substances that he may have been using over the course of his prep for this past Olympia. So good quality programming on the channel. And of course, the video from last week, which has certainly been the talk of the industry, and that is Dave's visit to the underground lab in India, and a lab that seemingly had every known PED ever created. And if you haven't already checked that out, we also put a teaser reel on Instagram. That's gotten a lot of views, but go check that out on YouTube. So again, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. We have a ton of content for you on the YouTube channel. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.